Well, welcome to everyone that is joining me right now here on Walking in Spirit and Truth. This is John Craig, and I wanted to say thank you for your patience waiting for me to log on. I'm having some technical difficulties again. We're going to have to get this thing resolved, but here we are. And so I don't have a camera today, and hopefully y'all are picking me up on the microphone. It shows that everything should be working. So anyway, and I've got a blank screen here too. So we're just going to be following through with just some audio only. And I apologize for that. But hey, we're going to go on. Sandi is not with us today on her end. So we're going to have to pick up next time, y'all willing, as we finish out Psalm 23. But this week, I wanted to take a little diversion, go over to something that I thought was very interesting. Maybe you'll find it interesting too. And this is over in the Sefer. So if you have the Olive Tov Sefer edition, you can go over to the book of Tobiyahu. Or also known as Tobit. And there were some things in here. I was sharing it with Sandi the other day, and I thought it was really interesting. And so I thought I'd have you all kind of look at it with me and see if you think the same thing with it. And this little book, of course, it's not in our regular Bibles, our 66 books that were canonized. And yet this book right here is extremely interesting. And I think it also shows us a little bit more into the picture of how Yah answers prayers. And also in terms of what about those people that were part of the northern kingdom and they went into exile before the southern kingdom did? And who were they, and who were some of those characters? And were any of the bunch godly people? Did any of them keep the feast, or did they all worship the calves that were at the southern end and the northern end of the northern kingdom? So this is what I found very interesting, is that this book is about a character. Actually, it's got several characters in it. The main character is Tobiyahu, and I'm going to call him Tobiyahu Senior because he also has a son, Tobiyahu, and so I'm going to call him Junior. And they lived in the land of Ashur or Assyria and in the city of Nineveh. And one of their contemporaries of that time was also the prophet Jonah. So here we have some of these people that you have heard of before, but I want to go in and give you a little bit about the character of who this person is. And it says here in the book, and it describes who he is. And it says, now all the tribes, this is in chapter 1, verse 5, of Tobit or Tobiyahu. And it says, now all the tribes which together revolted, and the house of my father Naphtali sacrificed unto the heifer Baal. But I alone went often to Jerusalem at the feast, as it was ordained unto all the people of Israel by an everlasting decree, having the first fruits and tenths of increase with that which was first shorn. And them gave I at the altar at the priest, the children of Aharon. So here's a guy that, in spite of his tribe, which is Naphtali, that had been taken into Assyria for captivity, yet he went often to Jerusalem for the feast. He says, his house of his father sacrificed unto the heifer Baal, but he did not. He and his family would go to Jerusalem. And I just thought that was very interesting. And he would go to the altar of the priests of the children of Aaron. And then it also says in verse 7, the first tenth, first of all, increase I gave to the sons of Aaron who ministered at Jerusalem. And and then another 10th part I sold away and went and spent it every year at Jerusalem. So he gave a 10th to the priest. He gave a 10th he used for the trip, and then a third I gave unto them whom it was meet, as Deborah my father's mother had commanded me, because I was an orphan from my father. So interesting enough, Deborah, and we've read about Deborah within the scriptures of one of the judges, and it says my father's mother had commanded me. And so it goes on. Now, if it's the same Deborah, maybe it's within the family, but nevertheless, he was an orphan, and he was following according to the scriptures. It says, because I was left an orphan by my father. Furthermore, when I come to the age of a man, I married Hannah of my own kindred, and of her I begat Tobiyahu. So that's Tobiyahu Jr. So I thought this was interesting. So here he marries, following the scripture, to marry one of his own tribe, which he did. And it goes on and talks about, but when we were carried away captives to Nineveh, all my brethren and those that were of my kindred did eat of the bread of other people, but I kept myself from eating, because I remembered Elohim with all my heart. And El Elyon gave me grace and favor before Enemeser, so that I was his purveyor. So it goes on that he was elevated to a particular place, and was able to serve Enemeser, who was the king at the time. Okay, so here's this story. This is the backstory that's going on. And then over here in chapter 2, where it says, verse 1, now, when I was home again, and my woman Hannah, his wife Hannah, was restored unto me with my son Tobiyahu, so Tobiyahu Jr., in the feast of what? Shavuot, which is a holy feast of the 7 weeks. There was a good dinner prepared me, in which I sat down to eat. And when I saw abundance of meat, I said to my son, go and bring that poor man, soever you find out of our brethren who is mindful of Yahweh, or Yahweh. And it says, and lo, I tarry with you. Then he came again and said, Father, one of our nation is strangled and cast out in the marketplace. Okay, so now it gives another part of the story. And it says he goes out and he leaves the Shavuot dinner, this feast that his wife had prepared, that they were all going to sit down together. And he takes this man who was killed, he was strangled, and he buries them, and he begins to mourn during the feast days. And it says that his neighbors even mocked him. But going on, it also says that in his sorrow, he couldn't sleep. And with his back up against a wall, there were some sparrows that he didn't know that were in the wall. And it says, the sparrows muted warm dung into my eyes, and whiteness came into his eyes. And he went to the physicians, and no one could do anything for him. So now he's blinded during all this time. Well, according to this word, it goes on and he gives a prayer. There's 2 prayers of great significance in this work of Tobit, or Tobiyahu. Chapter 3, it says, then I being grieved did weep, and in my sorrow prayed, saying, O Yahweh, you are just, and all your works and all your ways are mercy and truth, and you judge truly and justly forever. And what he does is he bears out his heart to him, and he says, remember me, don't punish me for my sins. And he talks about that he's obeyed the commandments, and he's been good to people, and how he's walked in the truth and walked in the ways. And it says in verse 6, now therefore deal with me as it seems best to you, and command my spirit, my ruach, to be taken from me, that I may be dissolved. And he's grieving. He's saying, just let me die. And and he goes on, for it's profitable for me to die rather than to live, because I have heard false reproaches and have much sorrows. I mean, think about this guy. This guy serving y'all had a great position. He had, in other words, a good income, and this tragedy has come to him because he went to take care of this man who had been strangled. And this, apparently at the time, that was a capital offense. You don't deal with those who had been strangled, those who had been hung, those who had the capital punishment administered against them by the ruling regime of the time. And you don't mess with their bodies. But he would go in and he would take those bodies and he would go and bury them. So he was a good man, so that they could be taken down and buried properly within the same day. But he also goes on, and he in this prayer says, command therefore that I may now be delivered out of this distress and go into the everlasting place. Turn not your face away from me. So this was his prayer. Now enters into the next character of the story. And this is about Sarah, the daughter of Reuel, who was also reproached by her father's maids. Now, what happened? What's going on with her story? And why is it important? And do their paths cross? Well, it lists specifically that there is an evil spirit called Asmodeus. And this young lady had married 7 men. And every one of them, before, this is so after the wedding ceremony, but before the marriage could be what's the word? Just before the marriage could be sealed in the wedding bed. I want to keep it rated G here, that the men died. Not just one, not just two, not just three, 7 of them. Wow, I'm pretty crazy. But it's because of this evil spirit that would come in and attack these men. And so here she never, the marriages were never sealed. And so she prays, being a widow, and she makes this prayer: blessed are you, Yahweh Elohai, and your holy and glorious name is blessed and honorable forever. Let your works praise you forever. So in the midst of her grief, she gives this prayer. She is chastised by her father's maids, and says, and now, O Yahweh, I set my eyes and my face towards you, and say, take me out of the earth. So here she has the same type of prayer, so that she no longer hears the reproach. And she says, command some regard to be had of me, and pity take it of me, that I hear no more reproach. So the prayers of them both were heard before the majesty of the great Elohim. And then here enters the next character into the story. This is and who's this character? In verse 17 of chapter 3 of the book of Tobit, it says, and Raphael was sent to heal them both, that is, to scale away the whiteness of Tobiyahu's eyes, that's Tobiyahu Senior's eyes, and to give Sarah, the daughter of Reuel, for a woman, to Tobiyahu Jr., the son of Tobiyahu Senior, and to bind Asmodeus, the evil spirit, because she belonged to Tobiyahu by right of inheritance. The self-same time came Tobiyahu home and entered into his house, and Sarah, the daughter of Reuel, came down from the upper chamber. All right. So now, how did those two get connected? Well, Senior had left a bag of money with Reuel, and being that he couldn't see, could not properly go and retrieve the money. So he sends his son to go get it. But in chapter 5, he says to his son, seek a man which may go with you while I yet live, and I will give him wages, and go receive the money. Therefore, when he went to seek a man, he found Raphael, who was an angel, but he knew not, and said to him, Can you go with me to Rages? And know you those places well? To whom the angel said, I will go with you, and I know the way well, for I have lodged with our brother Gavael. Then Tobiyahu Jr. said to him, Tarry for me, or wait for me, and I'll tell my father. And he goes on, and basically he goes to his father, look, I've got a guy that's going to go with me. And so they go out on this trip. Now, when they go on this trip, they come to a river, this river, Kedekel. And when they lodge there, the young man, Tobiyahu Jr., goes down and washes himself at the river. And this fish leaps out of the river. Now, this is where it's like, okay, this is very interesting. This fish leaps out of the river like it's going to devour him. But the angel, so Raphael, says to him, take the fish. And so the young man takes hold of the fish, draws him to land, and the angel says, open the fish, take the heart and the liver and the gall, and put them up safely. And so the young man did as he was told. And so they get a dinner, they have a dinner out of it. And the angel says to him, touching the heart and the liver, and he says, why are we doing this? And so Raphael tells him, touching the heart and the liver, if a devil or any evil spirit trouble any, we must make a smoke thereof before the man or the woman, and the party shall be no more vexed. Now, I want to just say this, and then it goes on before I go any further on this. And then he says something interesting. As for the gall, so I think it's talking about the fat. It says, it is good to anoint a man that has whiteness in his eyes, and he shall be healed. All right, so this is another part of the story. And that is a clue. Now, what I find very interesting is this is an angel of Yahweh. This is one of 7 angels that as he describes later on, that go before the throne of God, and they are messengers. And as his name reveals, Raphael, it speaks that his name is related to healing. Now, a lot of times what Sandi and I have experienced over the years, that the Father brings healing in different ways to people. And we see different accounts of the ways that people are healed within the Brit Hadashah. And when we see how Yeshua brings healing, sometimes he anoints, like he anointed a blind man's eyes with mud that was made from his own spit. Sometimes it was by a word that they were healed or that they were delivered. Sometimes it was they were told to go and dip in the water and wash themselves, like the blind man with the mud. Go now, wash your eyes out at the pool of Siloam. So these are different ways that healing is described. We see among the prophets where the general of Assyria had come to the prophet Eliyahu. And so with that, he tells him to go and dip himself in the river Jordan 7 times. And in the 7th time, he is delivered from leprosy. We see other times, different ways people are healed. We even see how the body of Elisha, who was being carried by a couple of men while they were being chased by the Midianites, and the bones of Elisha. They were carrying a friend who was dead, and they threw him into the grave where Elisha had been buried. and he fell on the bones, and the man was resurrected. So when we think about the different things, the way people are healed, it's not always, okay, we have a prayer and they're healed. Sometimes, for example, in our case where Sandy had been prayed over so many different times for to be healed of asthma, that she did not experience the manifestation of the healing until curses were broken. When the curses are broken, she wasn't tied to $500 in medicine every week. So there are different ways that people are healed or they experience healing. Sometimes it's through deliverance. Sometimes it's for a particular word of the Lord or a particular action that needs to be taken. So we shouldn't take these things and say, oh, this book reads like a fairy tale, when in reality, when a dead body was thrown on the bones of Elisha, does that seem like a fairy tale? For some people it might. But in fact, when he fell upon the bones of Elisha, those bones were still anointed and the guy came back to life. So we've got to understand that scriptures tell us that God works in wonderful ways that are outside our paradigms. So think about this. Paul speaks specifically that and the word tells us in the book of Acts that he made particular cloths. Now, it also describes him as being a tent maker. You put two and two together, that it appears that he made tallits, the prayer shawls. And in these tallits, when they were placed on people, the people were healed. When a particular lady with an issue of blood grabbed a hold of the tzitzit that was on the corner of Yeshua's tallit, she was healed, having known the word from Malachi that that people would be healed, that there was healing in his wings. The corners of the prayer shawl is called the wings, and what's on the corner? The tallit. So this woman, when she reached with the issue of blood, she touched it, she was healed. Yeshua said virtue flowed from him, and he said, who touched me? So when we look at this, we shouldn't think of this as some type of made up story. This is the witness of Tobiyahu Sr. and Tobiyahu Jr., and also of Sarah. So Raphael tells them to take particularly these issues from the fish. Yeshua told Peter, go fishing and you're going to get a fish that has 2 coins and pay your taxes and mine. I mean, wow, is that not miraculous, or are you going to call it a fairy tale? Did it not happen? Was it not real? So to Tobiyahu, to Tobit, it was very real. To this young lady, Sarah, who had lost 7 husbands, there was some type of evil presence, an evil spirit that was tied to where not one of her husbands survived the first night of their marriage before it could be consummated. So here we have this. Now, this young man, Tobiyahu Jr., arrives with Raphael to the household of Reuel, and here he recognizes who he is and says, oh, you are the son, you are the perfect husband for my daughter. Oh, well, Tobiyahu Jr. had heard the stories. He had heard about the 7 before him who had died. And he's like, wait a minute, is this my last night on earth? And it goes, and so in chapter 8, after all this, we're looking at, it says, and when they had supped, they brought Tobiyahu in unto her, and he went, and he remembered the words of Raphael, and took the ashes of the perfumes, and put the heart and the liver of the fish thereupon, and made a smoke therewith. When the smell which then the smell which when the evil ruach had smelled, he fled into the uttermost parts of Mitzrayim to Egypt, and the angel bound him. And after that, they were both shut in together. And it says, and after that, they were both shut in together. Tobiyahu Jr., I added Jr., rose out of the bed and said, Sister, arise and let us pray that Elohim would have pity on us. Then began Tobiyahu to say, Blessed are you, Elohim of our fathers. Blessed is your holy and glorious name forever. Let the heavens bless you and all your creatures. You made Adam and gave him Chava, his woman, for a helpmeet. And he goes on and makes this prayer. Furthermore, in verse 13, so the next morning, the maid opened the door and went in and found them both asleep and went forth and told them that he was alive. So here's this miraculous thing that takes place because this visitation of Raphael. Well, all right, long story short, they go back. He brings his bride to show his family. Reuel also gives him a great amount of inheritance that they might live on. So, he's coming back with an abundance. He also brings back Dad's money, who he had kept safely. And then the next thing is he sees Tobiyahu Jr., sees his father, and what's he do? Chapter 11, verse 11, he says, he took hold of his father, and then it says he strake of the gall on his father's eyes, saying, Be of good hope, my father. And when his eyes began to smart, he rubbed them, and the whiteness peeled away from the corners of his eyes. And when he saw his son, he fell upon his neck and he wept. And he said, Blessed are you, O Elohim, and blessed is your name forever, and blessed are all your holy angels. So now 2 miracles take place because of this visitation of Raphael. Now, am I saying we pray for an angel? No. If we see what happened is both Sarah and Tobiyahu Sr. both prayed. They were desperate. They're like, our lives have no value. Just take us away now. But in reality, God heard their prayers. He sent a messenger, gave the remedy. Sarah's delivered from this evil spirit. Tobiyahu Sr. receives his sight back. It had been 8 years that he had not seen. And then chapter 12, verse 14, and it goes on where it says, Now Elohim has sent me to heal you. Talk about Raphael. You and Sarah, your daughter-in-law. I am Raphael, one of the 7 holy angels, which present the prayers of the Kodashim, the holy ones, and which go in and out before the glory of the Holy One. Then they were both troubled and fell upon their faces, for they feared. But he said unto them, Fear not, for it shall go well with you. Praise Elohim, therefore, for not any favor of mine, but by the will of Elohim I came. Wherefore, praise him forever. All these days I did appear unto you, but I did neither eat nor drink, but ye did see a vision. So here is this wonderful thing that took place where there's a healing. There is a deliverance. We see this magnificent story. And at the end of this story, as we close out here on this part of walking in spirit and truth, we see Tobiyahu Sr. has a prophetic word which he releases. And he says, Go into Madai, my son, for I surely believe those things which Jonah, the prophet, spoke of Nineveh, that it shall be overthrown, and that for a time peace shall rather be in Madai, and that our brethren shall lie scattered in the earth from that good land, and Jerusalem shall be desolate, and the house of Elohim in it shall be burned, and shall be desolate for a time. And that again Elohim will have mercy on them and bring them again into the land where they shall build a temple, but not like to the first, until the time of that age be fulfilled. And afterward they shall return from all places of their captivity and build up Jerusalem gloriously, and the house of Elohim shall be built in it forever with a glorious building, as the prophets have spoken thereof. And all the nations shall turn and fear Yahweh Elohim truly, and shall bury their idols. So shall all nations praise Yahweh, and his people shall confess Elohim, and Yahweh shall exalt his people, and all those which love Yahweh Elohim in truth and justice shall rejoice, showing mercy to our brethren. So he gives this prophetic word at the end about talking about the restoration of all things. That's where I'm going to end it today. I hope you enjoyed this little rendition, the summary, the Reader's Digest version of Tobiyahu. But what a miraculous story. And we should always, when we see things not happening and we need the Father to do something, he hears our prayers. Don't put God in a box. Don't have an expectation that healing is going to come a certain way. And if it hasn't come, do not give up. And that's what this story of Tobiyahu tells me, that he is more than enough for us. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. So until next time, this is John Craig on behalf of Life of Worship Ministries and Walking in Spirit and Truth. Shalom.